See you surprised Climb because of the way you dressed. There was no caution or panic in her composed voice. The tension left Climb's shoulders as he realized what that meant. Got it, boss. The woman sitting in the darkness leaped to her feet. Ah yeah, you haven't met her, huh, Climb? She's one of my team members, her name is Tina. Renner finished Lachias' thought. Climb understood that the Adamantite ranked team, the Blue Roses, comprised 5 women, the leader, a faith caster named Lachias, a warrior named Gagarin, an arcane caster named Everly, and the 2 who had mastered thief skills, Tia and Tina. He had met the former 3 before, but not the other 2. He saw. She was just like the rumors said. With her slim body swathed head to toe in clinging black fabric, she certainly looked the part. Please excuse me, how do you do? My name is Climb. He bowed low to Tina. Huh, it's no big deal. After waving off Climb's apology, she approached the table almost soundlessly with sleek movements, akin to a wild animal. Then she pulled out the chair next to Lachias and sat down. The cup was hers. There were 3 cups on the table, so the number alone suggested she wasn't here, but Climb intently scanned the area anyway for the other woman he hadn't met. Lachias realized what he was doing immediately. Tia didn't come. Gagarin and Everly also said they hate formalities. It wasn't even that fancy. I dressed up just in case, but it wasn't like I was going to force them to, she said. In reality, formal dress was the correct attire for meeting the princess. Climb, however, didn't have any intention of pointing that out to a woman who was Renner's friend and a noble besides. I see, but I am very happy to finally meet the famous Lady Tina. I hope you'll remember me kindly should we meet in the future. How about sitting down and then chatting, Climb? Renner said, serving tea into a fresh cup. Steam rose from the tea pouring out of the warm bottle, a magic item that made it seem freshly steeped. The warm bottle would maintain any drink's temperature and quality for about an hour. It was one of Renner's favorite items. She used it especially often when welcoming important guests. She rarely used it otherwise. With no avenues of escape left, Climb accepted his fate. He sat down and took a sip of tea. It's delicious, Princess Renner. Renner beamed. In truth, Climb had no idea whether it was delicious. He just figured that since she had prepared the tea, it must be. Suddenly, he heard a level voice. It was difficult to discern its emotions. She should be out collecting intelligence today. This was ordered by someone who gave her work even though we were supposed to all come to the palace together. It's all our demon leader's fault. It went without saying the voice belonged to Tina. Averting his eyes from Lachias and the terrible smile that appeared on her face in response to the words demon leader, Climb said, Is that so? I'd like to meet her sometime. Climb, Tina and Tia are twins, and their hair is about the same length, so seeing one of them is enough. It wasn't about what was enough or not, but Climb indicated his understanding for the time being. He started feeling flustered under Tina's unreserved gaze. He thought he would just endure it, but then he wondered if she had noticed something he'd carelessly missed, so he made up his mind to ask, What is it? You've gotten too big? Huh, that made no sense. Climb had several question marks over his head when Lachias interrupted to apologize. Never mind, it's just a thing. Don't worry about it, Climb. Really, don't worry about it. I see, what are you talking about, Lachias? Climb had forced himself to accept the explanation, but unable to do so herself, Renner interrupted. Lachias made a whiny face at her. Whenever it comes to Climb, I just shut up. The reason I didn't bring Tia is because she's always trying to put weird ideas into Renner's head. So can you just understand that and be quiet? Aye, demon boss. But Lachias, what is it? At Renner's follow-up, Lachias's face twitched violently with an expression of agony. Right when Climb thought he should maybe chime in, she suddenly turned to him. Climb, looks like you love wearing that armor. Yes, it's fantastic armor. Thank you, the word felt forced. It was far from enough to describe the change of topic, but hoping to prevent the princess's guest from losing face, he replied. He ran his hand over the white armor he'd received from Renner. It had been constructed from quite a bit of mithril and a little orichalcum. It was enchanted with various spells, and it was surprisingly light, sturdy, and mobile. The Blue Roses were the ones who had offered to supply the mithril for his equipment, free of charge. No amount of bowing could possibly be enough to express his gratitude. He was about to lower his head when Lachias stopped him. No worries. We just gave Renner the leftovers from when we made our own mithril armor. Even mere scraps of mithril could fetch an extremely high price. An orichalcum ranked adventurer might have had the means to forge a full set of mithril plates, and a mithril rank could have possibly owned a mithril weapon. But the only ones who could hand over the material like it was nothing were probably powerful adamantite-ranked adventurers. Besides, it was Renner who asked. "We couldn't say no, you wouldn't take my money. I even saved up my allowance for it. Isn't it weird for a princess to have an allowance? The money from my estate is separate. I want to make Clime's armor with my allowance, yeah. You want to give him armor you made with your own money. If you knew, then why did you give the metal to me for free, you jerk? Do I really deserve to be called a jerk for that?" Pouting Renner and smirking Lachius started quarreling without really fighting. Watching the two, Clime's stoic expression nearly broke, but he held it together. He was able to see this peaceful, warm scene thanks to his master who had taken him in, but he couldn't ever open up and reveal his feelings. Showing his gratitude was proper, but he had stronger feelings deep inside, those he couldn't show. They were love. Clime shoved them down and suppressed them. Instead, he said the words he repeated many times. "Thank you, Princess Renner." The way he held his body clearly showed the difference between their positions, clarifying their relationship as master and servant. Renner reacted with a smile that contained a hint of sadness. Clime noticed this because he watched her more than anyone every day. "You're welcome. Now we seem to have gotten off track. Let us return to our earlier discussion. About the 8 fingers, right? You know we snuck into 3 villages growing the drugs and burned the fields, right?" At that name, Clime mentally frowned. The 8 Fingers was a criminal organization operating in the kingdom's underworld. His beloved and respected master was figuring out what to do about them. If they torched the drugs supplying the livelihoods of those villagers, there weren't any good answers as to what would become of them. But they were necessary sacrifices in eradicating the narcotics eating away at the kingdom. Someone with absolute power would have had a number of ways to solve the problem. But despite being the princess, Renner had virtually no support. Consequently, she had to make realistic choices as to who she could save and who she needed to ignore. If she petitioned her father, the king, she might have been able to attack with military and authoritative might wherever she wished. But since the 8 Fingers had clear ties to various nobles, intelligence would most certainly leak. This would allow the criminals to anticipate her moves and destroy all the evidence of their crimes. That's why Renner had chosen to rely on her friend Lachius and her team directly. Clime knew that such a request was a risky move. Normally, adventurers fielded jobs via the guild. Accepting jobs directly was not permitted. What they were doing was against the rules. Granted, the guild couldn't very well penalize or banish a team at the highest rank. Still, breaking the rules could hurt their reputation internally and put them at a disadvantage in the future. The reason they undertook the mission regardless must have been because the Blue Roses loved their country and saw Renner as a friend. She was putting herself and her team on the line, making Clime even more grateful to her. Lachius felt it was about time to bring up a certain topic. So she opened the bag Tina had brought and withdrew a piece of parchment. It was something the Blue Roses hadn't been able to decipher. Lachius thought Renner, who had the best brains of anyone she knew, might be able to figure it out. "We found these when we were lighting the narcotic fields. They seem like some kind of instructions, so we brought them back with us. But can you make anything of them?" On the unfurled parchment were symbols from no writing system for any country they had ever seen. Renner answered nonchalantly after just a glance. "It's a substitution cipher. A substitution cipher is a type of code. It substitutes symbols or other characters for single or multiple character units of normal writing. For example, if A is and B is, then is AAB. That's what I thought too. So I looked everywhere for the key, but unfortunately I couldn't find it. It's possible they have it memorized. It made sense to charm the man we captured into being our ally and get the key from him. He seemed like someone in charge. But as you know, charm magic is less effective when the same person casts it on the same target multiple times. I wanted to make sure the first round was a good one, so I thought we should check with you first. I see. Why was this at the scene anyway? Is it a trap, or was there some other reason? Then they wouldn't use something very hard to crack. Right, I think this is pretty easy to decipher. Lachius's eyes widened. She exchanged a glance with Tina beside her, even though she hadn't meant to. She couldn't believe it. On the other hand, it was Rena. Also, in the language of the kingdom, the first letters will represent either the masculine article, the feminine article, or the neuter article. So 1 second, as the princess mumbled, she got up, still holding the parchment, and grabbed a pen and paper. Then the letters started to flow onto the paper. This is a pretty simple cipher, since each symbol stands for a single character, and we were lucky they were using the language of the kingdom. If the key were a book from the Empire, it'd be pretty much impossible. With this, well, if you can figure out one letter, it's just about filling in the rest from there. Anyone can decipher this with a little effort. No, it's easy to say that, but it's impossible unless you know tens of thousands of words, right? Said Lachius. These are instructions written in code. You wouldn't expect any overly complex phrasing. The possibility of difficult vocabulary is extremely slim. It should be written in plain language even a child could understand. So that narrows it down quite a bit. A figurative sweat drop dangled in Lachius's mind. Her friend talked like it was simple, but it wasn't such an easy thing. She can do it, but she really is incredibly smart. Every time they met and talked, she was surprised and new. Lachius didn't know anyone who fit the word genius as well as Rena. Lachius secretly had the creeps, but Rena was relatively nonchalant when she said, "I got it." It wasn't instructions, though, and handed over the paper. It was a list of various places in the kingdom. There were 7 in all. I wonder if it means drugs are stored here or that they ray important strategic locations, Lachius suggested. I doubt they would write down such important information and leave it lying around a mere production facility. They must be decoys. Decoys? You mean it's a trap? HRM? I don't think so. The 8 Fingers is one organization, but people say it's split into 8 organizations that kind of work together, right? Lachius nodded. So they ray intentionally giving away information about the other 7 organizations, or divisions I guess, to divert attention from themselves. They prepared intelligence on the other 7 divisions. I expected the organization wasn't a monolith, but I didn't expect them to be this to adventurers. Betraying one's comrades was disgusting. I knew we'd have to move fast, but yeah, I guess if we don't we'll have issues. Rena nodded and Lachius asked another question. So then, what about that brothel? Apparently, it's a pretty nasty place where you can do anything. Just saying that made her insides boil with rage. Those filthy pieces of trash, garbage who can think of anything except their own desires should drop dead. She snarled in her mind. She recalled the information she had on the brothel. She wasn't thinking of herself as a noble-s daughter, but as an experienced woman adventurer. She didn't even need to guess what anything meant. She knew that multiple people, men and women, had been killed for pleasure. Back in the days of slave trafficking, a few of those types of brothels existed in the underworld. But recently, thanks to her friend's work, slavery became illegal. Those facilities began disappearing. This place could very well be the last brothel in the royal capital, or even the kingdom. That was precisely why it couldn't be expunged so easily. They would surely meet strong opposition. It was the last filthy paradise for people with unspeakably sleazy tastes. Hey, Rena. Since there's no way to use your authority to carry out a search, why not force our way in and blow the lid off the place? There won't be any trouble as long as we find evidence, right? If the slave trafficking division is really running the brothel, it'll be a huge blow to the 8 Fingers if we take it down. And depending on what evidence we find, it could also be a heavy strike against the nobles who do business with them. Maybe Lachius. But one that caused troubles for your family, the House of Alvine, so it's tricky. It's tricky if we mobilize the Blue Roses, but it'd be impossible for Clyme to go in and take them out on his own. I am sorry I am not strong enough. When Clyme bowed his head, Rena cupped his hand in hers and smiled kindly. Sorry, Clyme, I didn't mean it like that. It's the only underworld brothel in the capital. No one could take it out alone. I trust you the most, Clyme. I know how hard you work for me. Don't do anything reckless, okay? And I am not asking as a favor, that's an order. If anything ever happened to you, even Lachius, watching from beside Rena, felt the peerless beauty's teary eyes pierce her heart. How was Clyme's heart doing? He frantically tried to keep a straight face, but couldn't quite manage it. His blushing cheeks said it all. If a bard were to title this scene, it would be the princess and the knight. It was moving, but a touch of fear unsettled Lachius. She didn't think it was possible, but if Rena was doing all this on purpose, then she knew every trick in the book. It was unbelievable. What am I thinking? That's not the kind of thing you should think about a close friend. Everything she has done speaks to the fact that she is not a bad person. If I can believe in the golden princess who has done so much to help people, then who can I believe in? Lachius shook her head and spoke, in part to clear away those horrible thoughts. By the way, Tina and Tia's research found the names of a few nobles with connections to the slave trafficking division chief, Kokoda. We need more time to confirm the information before we act on it. When she listed the names of several nobles, both Rena and Klein reacted at the same time. His daughter is one of my maids. I don't think he had her placed there to spy on you, but there's no guarantee she is only there to cultivate prestige. Yes. I should be careful about the information I share. You remember that too, Klein? Okay, let us decide what to do about the places we learned from the coded message. And Rena, can I borrow Klein? I want him to tell Gagarin and the others that we'll be making a move soon. 23 Late Fire Moon, September 9:49 a.m. Klein walked down one of the capital's broad streets. Nothing about his appearance made him stand out. He melted into the crowd. He had taken off his white full-plate armor, which certainly would have attracted attention. If he used a special alchemical item, he could change its color, but he didn't feel like going to that much trouble just to wear it. There was no need to equip full armor just for a walk around the city anyway, so he was dressed lightly, with mail hidden under his shirt. The only thing that set him apart from an ordinary civilian was the longsword at his hip. That was about the same level of gear as the patrolling soldiers, guards, mercenaries, and other people on the street wore. Even if some people gave him a relatively wide berth, he wasn't armored heavily enough that the crowd parted. Any ponderously outfitted people were adventurers. This style was less for necessity and more to stand out. For an adventurer, dressing to attract attention was not strange. It was advertising. Some even dressed in a particularly eccentric way to create a strong impression, spread rumors, and make a name for themselves. In other words, style was like an adventurer's trademark. But for adventurers at the level of the Blue Roses, whom Klein was currently going to meet, there was no need for fashion statements. At their rank, a stroll down the street was enough to get people talking. Eventually, an adventurer inn came into view. It had an inn, a stable, and a large yard for practicing with a sword. The fantastic exterior made it easy to imagine the beautiful interior. The windows of the guest rooms were fitted with clear glass. That top-class hotel was a gathering spot for adventurers confident in their skills and able to pay the fairly high rate. Klein opened the door, ignoring the guards on either side. For how large it was, there were few adventurers in the spacious bar and dining hall that took up the entire first floor. There just weren't very many elite adventurers to begin with. A slight murmur traveled through the group. Their curious eyes gathered on Klein. He paid no mind and scanned the room. The occupants were all extremely powerful. Any one of them could have easily defeated him. Every time he came to a place like this, he was reminded how insignificant he was. Klein endured the depressing thought and held his gaze on one particular point in the bar. He was focused on two people sitting at a round table in the back. One was small and cloaked in a black robe. The figure's face was hidden. It wasn't because of the light, but because the person wore a strange mask. A crimson jewel was set in the forehead, and the mask covered their entire face. There were eye slits, but even the color of the irises behind them was out of sight. Then there was the other person. The one in robes was small, but this character was overwhelmingly large to the point it brought to mind the word megalith. The entire body was thick, but it wasn't wrapped in body fat. The figure's arms had the girth of logs. The neck supporting a square head seemed about the size of a woman's thighs put together. Broad jaw clenched with effort, her eyes resembled those of a predatory beast as she kept tabs on the area. The short blonde hair prioritized only function. Her chest conspicuously bulged under the clothing. It brought to mind the image of pectoral muscles trained to extremes. Frankly, it was no longer the chest of a woman. The adamantite adventurer team comprised entirely of women, the Blue Roses. This curious pair contained two of its members, the arcane caster Everly and the warrior Gagarin. Klein continued his approach. The one he had been aiming for called out in a husky voice, "Hey, virgin, The gazes that had left Climb gathered on him once again, but no one jeered. On the contrary, the adventurers lost interest immediately and averted their eyes with something resembling pity. Everyone knew getting involved with a guest of Gagarin S was not brave but reckless, even for an Orichalcum or Mithril-ranked adventurer. Shamed, Climb kept walking nonetheless. Gagarin wouldn't change her nickname no matter how many times he told her, so giving up and just pretending he didn't care was the most effective thing he could do. It's been a while, Gagarin.